This is an exciting time in Scotland's story, and understanding our past will help us determine our future. And when Scotland's voice is heard, it charts the way forward. This is Scotland Speaks with Salmond. In my view, delegates, if ALBA hadn't been formed 2 years ago, then it would be necessary to reform it today. 2 years ago, some of us believed the SNP were preparing to downgrade the independence campaign, and that the much vaunted and much promised referendum might disappear into the ether. Now the SNP has abandoned the independence campaign and not demand independence anymore, or even a referendum, but to ask, according to the motion at their conference and the leadership, Westminster for a democratic effect. Now, some of you, many of you, in fact, probably all of you, were in the great demonstration for independence this year in Glasgow Green. And you'll remember the cry, what do we want? Independence. When do we want it?
Now.
Well, the SNP have changed that. They've amended it. It's now a cry of, what do we want? A democratic effect. And when do we want it? Not anytime soon. Under the leadership of Nicola Sturgeon, the SNP conned the independence campaign. Under the leadership of Humza Yousaf, the SNP have abandoned the independence campaign, and thus they have abdicated any claim for leadership of it. So let me start this speech by articulating what the SNP find it impossible to state with any clarity. ALBA stand for Scottish independence. Every vote for ALBA at each and every election is a vote for independence. And if a majority of votes is cast in any election in that direction, then the Scottish Government is mandated to negotiate independence. If Westminster says no, then we should mobilise domestic and international opinion to force them to respect the democratic wishes of the sovereign Scottish people. Now, if I can say that in two simple sentences, then why can't the SNP? Can I suggest the answer? They produce convoluted gobbledygook because they have no idea what they're doing. Their language betrays the fact that they have no seriousness of intent. They are stringing people along. And the problem is, of course, that isn't Scotland's greatest secret. I know it, you know it, Scotland knows it, but so does Westminster. Why do you think it is that successive UK Prime Ministers have been emboldened in their progressive refusals to countenance an independence referendum? Why have we gone from Theresa May, now is not the time, to Johnson's not now, to Sunak's just plain no? This is because they look the SNP government straight in the eye and have judged there is nothing there.
Welcome to Scotland Speaks with Salmond for a very special edition of this week's show here in Glasgow from the Woodside Halls in Maryhill. Now, since I chair the party and Alex leads it, we make no claim at all at impartiality, but nonetheless, we will try to offer an insight into what kind of party ALBA is by chatting to its activists about the conference. the mainstream media at large boycott ALBA, so this will be a unique opportunity to see what goes on and just a glimpse behind the amazing scenes here. However, the media were for sure regretting their decision not to turn up when on a dramatic Saturday, ALBA gained its first MSP when former SNP leadership candidate, the wonderful Ash Regan, joined the ALBA party. Here's what happened.
Conference. You may have noticed that speech was slightly shorter than some of the ones you might have been used to from me. There's a reason for that, and I mean all that stuff about the social media is very handy, because as I was making the speech and calling for new recruits to the ALBA party, I got a message saying a number of people were joining during the course of this live broadcast. And I would like you now to welcome the latest recruit to ALBA, and that is Miss Ash Regan, the MSP Administrator.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Scots, it's good to be here. You know, I had planned to stay put at home for a weekend I had planned of household repairs, but then it dawned on me. What's more important, fixing a blocked drain or coming here to help unblock Scotland's path to independence? The reason I'm standing in front of you here today is because I believe that the SNP has strayed from the path to independence, and it's time for ALBA to get Scotland back on track. So that wave of optimism sparked by the 2014 referendum, it swept many people into the Yes movement and myself and others into the Scottish Parliament in 2016. And we really all did think that it was only a matter of time. Even after delay upon delay, I stood for election again in Edinburgh Eastern in 2021, hoping desperately that the solemn promise that there would be another independence referendum this year would come to be realised. Now, instead of a referendum, the SNP leadership is calling for something that they're calling a democratic effect, of a timescale where it seems to be sometime or maybe never. They won't even commit to a plebiscite poll at the next Scottish election. They're saying they're only going to consider it. Well, if they're capable of reneging on a definite commitment to a referendum this year, what's to stop them forgetting about a conditional commitment to an election poll in future years? The position on independence taken at the SNP conference has not just let the Yes movement down, it's let Scotland down. Now, no doubt, my decision that I've taken will anger some. And there does seem to be so much anger in the world today, including anger across the independence movement. But anger is easy. It's a seductive trap that we can fall into. It provides that temporary relief over a feeling of pain and hurt, of being misled by those that have betrayed our trust. But let's stop numbing our pain with anger. All it's doing is making things worse, and we must all rise above it now. Let's channel our collective energies into constructive action. And when it comes to the online world, a place where anger often festers, let's replace vitriol with vision and hashtags with handshakes. Future generations will never forgive us if we let anger consume the independence cause. So let's stop that anger today. Right now, hope returns to the Scottish independence movement. Working together across streets, across the country, and across parliaments is what will refocus minds and hearts. And it won't be easy, but there's not much that's worthwhile in life that comes easy. And it's not enough just to talk about independence. We need a tangible plan that's more than words, a plan that's a sequence of actions that will lead us to an independent Scotland. And at this conference, there'll be a debate on the ALBA Party's independence and general election strategy, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what the outcome of that will be. Now, I'd like to take the opportunity to speak to any yes voters that might be watching this at home, and particularly to anyone that's feeling politically homeless right now. ALBA is ready to pick up the baton and to do what is needed to achieve independence as a matter of urgency. Not maybe, not hopefully, not sometime in the distant future, but now, because now is our time. It's Scotland's time. I sacrificed, as you'll know, the trappings of ministerial office about a year ago now over a matter of principle on the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. And like you, I cannot and I will not compromise on the rights or safety of women and girls. So I'm joining ALBA on principle 2. I'm joining on the principle that independence cannot be a carrot that is deployed at election time just to keep the voters voting for you. Independence must be that material commitment. And I was voted into Parliament to progress it and to achieve it. And my solemn commitment to my constituents in Edinburgh Eastern and the trust that they put in me, I feel can now only be served by the saltire blue principle of the ALBA Party. Conference, I'm sure many in the SNP will say that I should resign my seat. But why? I'm staying true to my election pledge. Yes! Can the other 60 or so SNP MSPs really say the same? No. Can they say that they secured the no ifs, the no buts referendum? Can they say that they've secured an election mandate for independence at each and every election starting now? No. So maybe it's the 60 that should resign their seats and explain themselves to the people. To say to voters out there to trust us to deliver what you have voted for, which is politicians that get on with it and deliver independence. And lastly, let us remember, independence isn't our end goal, it's Scotland's new beginning. Imagine a Scotland that leads and not follows, a Scotland that leads the way in living standards, in economic resilience and innovation. A nation that invented the modern world can surely end poverty in our country. So here we are, united in our purpose, but let's also be united in our action. And so for the sake of every Scot who dreams of what Scotland can be, let's turn those dreams into plans and those plans into action. So I am proud to become, as of today, the first ever ALBA member of the Scottish Parliament. And our task is to make me the first of many. So let's get to work. Yay!
Ash Regan, the newest member of ALBA. The conference is going on in full swing behind us, but what did you think of the reception you got today here in Glasgow?
It was quite extraordinary. It was an extremely warm reception, which warmed my heart, actually.
And the very first ALBA MSP in the Scottish Parliament, what does that feel like?
I think it'll take a bit of getting used to for myself as well as the other people in the Scottish Parliament, but yes, I'm fully ready to get to work and be making the case for Scottish independence.
You made an interesting point in your speech. You were saying how you'd kept your contract with the people in Edinburgh Eastern, and then you sort of questioned why others hadn't. What point were you making there?
Well, I joined the SNP because I want Scottish independence. I believe that's why many people join the SNP. I believe that's why most, if not all of the people vote for the SNP. They want to see a credible plan set out to get to independence. And I started to feel, and I think other people possibly feel this way as well, that independence has kind of slipped off the agenda for the SNP. It doesn't seem that as the party was set up for this to be our central, for the SNP to be the central focus, and it has slipped down that agenda, and I no longer felt that there was a credible plan to get to independence. So I feel that I am still staying true to the reason that I was elected by the people of Edinburgh Eastern, who put their trust in me to progress independence, to deliver independence. And so I feel I'm sticking to that. But unfortunately, I'm not able to continue doing that in the SNP, and I have decided to move to ALBA to do that.
And you got quite a response when you said maybe the 60 SNP MSPs should be thinking about going back to the electorate and explaining themselves.
Yes. Well, I'm sure there are some people that will say that I should resign my seat. You know, obviously I was elected on an SNP ticket, but I feel like I'm sticking true to what I believe in. I am wanting to progress the case for Scottish independence and work towards a plan to get us there. So to my mind, it is those that are prepared to sit quietly, knowing that independence isn't coming anytime soon under that SNP leadership plan that was outlined at the recent SNP conference, that they need to have a little think about that.
There was a tremendous response to your point about women's rights and how you'd resigned office because you wouldn't compromise on women's rights or women's and girls' safety. Did that give you a warm feeling as well?
It certainly did, yes. It is quite a difficult thing to do. It's quite rare, actually, in politics for people to feel strongly about something and actually cause damage to their own career prospects, if you want to look at it that way. So it is a rare thing to do, and obviously it wasn't supported very much by, you can imagine my former team of colleagues. So it's very nice to feel that support and that warmth here today, yes.
Well, if I can take my interviewer hat off and put my ALBA hat on, can I say welcome to ALBA?
Thank you very much.
Ash Regan, thank you for joining me on Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thanks.
Welcome back. And now we turn to how Ash Regan's joining of the ALBA party was received by the parliamentarians for ALBA at Westminster.
Kenny MacAskill, you were a long-standing member of the Scots Parliament. Can one person, can Ash Regan really make a difference in that Parliament 129?
Oh, absolutely. I think, even during my tenure, but since its formation, what we've seen is individuals have made great strides and changes, often on their own. Margaret MacDonald pursuing the Holyrood building, Tommy Sheridan with free school meals before the SSP, and indeed Dennis Kahneman. All of those were elected individually, stood individually, but contributed immensely. And I've no doubt that Ash will be able to not just work individually, but work collectively with ALBA and indeed with others.
And so, what do you think is the real significance of Ash Regan's decision to join ALBA, and will others follow it?
Well, I think it's ALBA's rising. We heard that today from Gordon Martin of the RMT, that it's the conscience of the independence movement. There is a malaise. The SNP is struggling in office. Scotland is looking for change, because now is the time. So I think this is just a sign of the times. ALBA is on the rise, and Ash is just the start.
Thank you very much, Kenny MacAskill, and thank you for joining me on Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thank you.
Neale Hanvey, so ALBA at this conference have gone from 2 parliamentarians to 3 parliamentarians. Does that make a big difference?
Well, yeah, it does. It makes an enormous difference, Alec. You know as well as I do, if you're a member of any organisation, whether it's a council or a parliament, it gives you a different right of access to the civil servants and ministers in that parliament. And the Scottish Parliament has been particularly impenetrable, despite all of our efforts in Westminster on key issues such as the ferries. To get access and answers from the Scottish Parliament has been very difficult. So to have a member in that Parliament with the right of access that goes alongside that, that's going to be really helpful to us.
Now, you and Kenny MacAskill created quite a stir at Westminster. You almost caused the Speaker apoplexy, I remember. But in things like your self-determination bill and Kenny's pursuit of the energy equality, energy-rich Scotland, fuel poverty for Scots,
yes.
These have been big campaigns. But how can Ash, who's on her own in another parliament, join in these?
Well, I mean, we can have initiatives that are replicated in both parliaments, or, for example, we can tackle problems that straddle both parliaments. So, for example, Kenny and I have done a huge amount of work on the reintroduction of direct ferry routes from Scotland into Europe. But as I say, the Scottish Government's been particularly impenetrable in getting answers from Scottish Government ministers about their thinking and civil servants' thinking on that. So to have a member in Parliament who can take that issue forward on our behalf as a party, that's going to be really helpful. But there's nothing to stop us from initiating initiatives in parallel in both parliaments that complement and enhance the impact of those initiatives, and that's something that we will be exploring in detail in the coming days. So,
do you expect Ash Regan's move to ALBA to have big ramifications for Scottish politics?
Well, I think it's, the surprise that it's created in the media, for one thing, has been very encouraging, and the reception that Ash received from our membership yesterday was such a warm and encouraging reception. So for anyone who's thinking about moving across, they know that our position on independence is credible and our membership will welcome them with open arms. So I think it's very likely that we'll see further defections and further movement in membership into the ALBA party, because we are clearly the only party for independence in Scotland now.
Neale Hanvey, ALBA's parliamentary leader at Westminster, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Alec.
In last week's show, we focused on the case for independence and the European Free Trade Association, EFTA, and featured interviews with one of the architects of the SNP's Scotland in Europe strategy, victor of the Govan by-election, Jim Sillars. We also featured the Western President of the Nordic Council, the Icelandic MP Bryndís Haraldsdóttir, and independent researcher Craig Berry. Here's what they told us.
So in order to retain sovereignty over critical domestic areas, and in order to retain sovereignty over foreign policy and trade policy, strikes me that EFTA and a member of the EEA is the most sensible position for Scotland to take.
And in my opinion, I thought it could be a good idea that you guys would just join EFTA with us. But I heard that there was not very much willingness, probably more up like in Scotland. And I know we have had like really tight and good communication and ties with Scotland. So I think it is something that you should discuss and look into.
It's certainly a matter for the people of Scotland to decide, but I suppose what I'd like to ask, Brindish, would we be welcome in EFTA? Would you and Norway and Switzerland and Liechtenstein like to have Scotland as a member if there was an application?
So, of course, I couldn't answer you right now, but I think I think we would welcome you. At least welcome the discussion, yes.
So for joining EFTA, that's a process that could take weeks to months. When you're in EFTA, if you have a group of people that believe that perhaps Scotland would be better served being in the single market of the EU, then the EEA agreement, that's something we could join the European Economic Area, that has a streamlined process for EFTA states. So if we want to join the single market of the EU, we can do that. If we want to join the EU, former members took as little as 23 months to enter. So it entirely depends on what Scotland wants to do at the time. We'll have to shape what Scotland is, and then we'll have to decide what is the best step for us. So we can remain within EFTA. That's probably the option I would prefer, but there are other options there, and our ability to move forward is enhanced when we're in EFTA.
And here's what you had to say about this new idea of independence within EFTA. BC Griffiths said, "Superb show, very informative." Peam says, "I wouldn't want us to give up our sovereignty to rejoin the EU. I'd much rather go for membership of EFTA. Sounds like a much better option in my opinion. Great show, guys. Very informative as usual." Bieran Evis says, "It's important to have options that don't rely on Westminster. I hope that an independent Scotland will be in EFTA soon." Sports 872 says, "I've always been very keen to know what the alternatives to the EU are for an independent Scotland, but I've never seen much discussion or media, so I'm interested to see this." GGAG says, "An excellent and intelligent look at Scotland with EFTA and EU relations. Glad I watched it." And finally, Donald Wright says, "Tasmina and Alex, as usual, another awesome programme. I was very impressed with Jim and Craig's insight into the workings of EFTA." Meanwhile, back in Maryhill, the ALBA delegates were getting stuck into explaining their international policy and also receiving a very special guest.
And given all that has happened since Brexit, what I find most disheartening is the lack of commitment by any party, other than ALBA, to give this the serious attention which it deserves. Only ALBA, your party, has put in place policies which will mitigate the impact of Brexit in the shortest possible timescale. Our policy of joining EFTA and subsequently becoming party to the European Economic Area Agreement will see an independent Scotland reap the benefits of the free movement of goods, people, services and capital. And through that, we can begin to rebuild and renew the economic ruin of Brexit. Conference, we owe it to the Scottish people to do what we can, as efficiently as we can, to remedy the terrible wrong that has been inflicted on them. And advocating that an independent Scotland should lay the ground for applying the Schengen Acquis will do that. Please support this motion.
The vital aspects that we would retain in terms of sovereignty as a member of EFTA are over key areas of economic activity, from agricultural to fisheries and, most importantly, energy. Now, those industries are going to be absolutely vital to the early days of an independent Scotland as we build our economy and try to correct the damage of Brexit.
Can I ask Conference to join me in welcoming the Honorary Consul General for Switzerland, Peter Muller-MacDonald. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now let's hear what the delegates had to say about all of the events and circumstances and exciting news that happened at the conference in Glasgow last weekend.
Harry Jenkins, you're a bit of a legend in Dundee political circles in that you can deliver more leaflets per hour than any other activist in the Yes City. Is that true?
Except for Davy, sorry.
So Davy's better.
Well,
is
no,
he younger?
The same. Aye, he's younger. He's the same age as my son, so, you know, like...
Anyway, apart from that phenomenal leafleting, I mean,
yes.
You were recognised at the conference today as the Activist of the Year.
Right,
What did that mean a lot?
Well, it was a bit of a shock, right, because obviously I'm not on Twitter or Facebook or that other stuff that they do, WhatsApp, whatever, you know, so I hadn't had a clue what was going on. So it was a bit of a shock because I didn't know what was happening, right, until somebody told me.
But then you probably were puzzled when I said to you at lunchtime on the Saturday, I said, I'll see you later, Annie.
No, I wasn't puzzled because I was too busy selling raffle tickets for that group, what do you call them?
So listen, as the ALBA Activist of the Year, what do you think of the conference and what do you think the prospects of the party are?
Well, I do leafleting and canvassing, right? But I haven't got a Scooby about any policies or anything that goes on, and it was exactly the same when I was in the SNP. So the only person who kept me up to date was Alan Petrie. So I keep saying to him, what's happening here, what's going on? So I'm not politically minded.
But are you pleased we've got a foothold in the Scottish Parliament now with Ash Regan?
Oh yeah, did you? I was speechless. I was hyper, total hyper, right? Yeah. She's going to make a difference. She's a real grassroots activist, right? So I'm really pleased because you could tell, you know, like her personalities is people are going to follow it, right?
Annie Jenkins, ALBA Activist of the Year. Thank you for appearing in Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thank you, Alex.
So far at conference, my highlight has to be Ash Regan moving over to join finally the pro-independence party in Scotland. I think it's going to give us a real boost as a party to have an MSP with such commitment and dedication as Ash has got, and I think it really gave us a big boost yesterday. Just that the independence is on our grasp, it's right there, it's there to be grasped for us, and I think Ash moving over has been a really fantastic part of that. I think also I've really enjoyed the variety of motions that have been going on. Yesterday we had transport, we had land reform, and then today we've got motions on supporting our national team. So it's been such a broad set of motions that have been proposed and passed by conference, but I think it really has to be Ash Regan moving over. I think is absolutely fantastic.
As a new member, it's been really good to attend a conference again that has that buzz about it, and I'm really excited to see where we go in the next year.
Very exciting to be at ALBA Conference this weekend. The agenda is thrilling for me because I'm very concerned about transport, the national health, and most of the things I could have picked out today, including the language. So for me to be able to sit in amongst people who are like-minded and voting for positive change is the most exciting time.
Hi there. So I think my highlight of our conference has been the range of discussion we've had. There's been motions in, people have spoken against, people have spoken for, people have remitted back, but it's been an open and honest discussion and everyone's had their voice heard.
Well, this has been a slightly unusual Scotland Speaks because we're broadcasting from the ALBA Conference here in Maryhill in Glasgow. Now, as Tasmina was saying at the beginning, we made no claim to be unbiased or impartial. Clearly, I'm the leader of ALBA. Tasmina is the chair of the ALBA party. But we tried to bring you coverage of this conference to see the range of things being discussed because of the mainstream media, of course, are noticeable by their absence. Mind you, they were regretting that greatly on Saturday after Ash Regan's dramatic announcement she was joining ALBA. They were running here in their droves and desperately trying to borrow ALBA's footage so they could show it on the main news bulletins. And you know, that brings us to the underlying significance of the events of this weekend. You see, what Ash Regan's decision does is to give the ALBA party additional credibility. 2 MPs at Westminster now, for the first time, a member of the Scottish Parliament. I mean, ALBA is clearly a diverse and it's a growing party. It represents the heart in Scotland in so many issues at the present moment. But the thing that people look at a political party and they ask, is this a party that can win, that can have an influence, that can improve our circumstances? Ash Regan's decision helps enormously with that credibility argument. And because ALBA is gaining ground and gaining credibility, that means the chances of getting to Scottish independence at any time in the near future rise accordingly. Because it's only with the crystal clear determination of will to move for independence that we have any hope of delivering it in this generation. So the events in Maryhill this weekend, largely ignored initially by the mainstream media till they had to turn out and cover the most significant event in Scottish politics for some time, then could have a long-term significance, because if ALBA is rising, then the chances of Scottish independence are also rising. And now I hand back to Tasmina to tell us, as she closes out the show, what might be on in next week's edition of Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.
Thank you, Alex. And that brings us sadly to the end of this week's show. We do hope you've enjoyed the roundup we brought you from the ALBA Party Conference. We hope too that you will join us next week as we put it online at 9 p.m. in our usual time on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. In fact, every social media channel, as Alex says, you can find, we'll be on it.
For the second part of this glimpse at the ALBA Conference, when we look at the ALBA view on some of the biggest issues facing Scotland: land, transport, health and housing policy. And we answer the question as to why Scotland's new independence party is the most diverse in the country. We'll see you then.
This is an exciting time in Scotland's story, and understanding our past will help us determine our future. And when Scotland's voice is heard, it charts the way forward. This is Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.